President of Divorce Right, and we provide training for HR professionals and company supervisors. And we also provide divorce coaching and case management, providing guidance and direction that your divorcing employees so desperately need. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company they work for. Our coaches have a unique perspective on divorce. They have a deep understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. Our coaches are trained to look at the entire picture, helping your employees make good decisions based on their goals and their expectations. So, if you're an HR benefits manager, an HR benefits provider, or consultant, please reach out to us and see if adding our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And as a reminder, we have SHRM credits for SHRM members, and we'll be posting a link at the end of this broadcast so that you can go in and grab those. And I want to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Paulette Rigo. She is an incredible certified divorce coach and mediator and is one of the best in the business and is the director of coaching and case management right here at Divorce Right. And today we're going to be talking about grief and divorce and how you can support your employees going through it with my friend and colleague, Dr. Randy Heller. Dr. Heller received her doctorate in family therapy from Nova Southeastern University. She has held multiple positions as an educator, exceptional student specialist, a family counselor for the Broward County School Board since 1980, and she is now a licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist in Florida, New York, and Connecticut, and works in all 3 states. Dr. Heller is a certified Supreme Court family mediator, qualified parenting coordinator, and certified hypnotist, and founder of clinical director of the Family Network, Collaborative Counseling Center for Positive Growth and Change, established in 1994. Dr. Heller has had highly successful experience working in all age groups, parents, couples, step families, children of divorce, students with educational, motivational, behavioral challenges, facilitating change in their behavior, interactions, and relationships. Dr. Heller is a clinical member and approved supervisor of the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. Dr. Heller is an active member of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals and serves as a board member of the New York Association of Collaborative Professionals and the Collaborative Family Law Professionals of South Florida, and is past president of the CFL-PSF and is co-chair of the research for IACP and standing chair of the research committee for the FACP on the IACP Higher Education Task Force. Woo, Randy, and has participated as a member of the Access to Collaboration Committees of the IACP for many years. This is why I trust this woman, you guys.
Okay, we're done. We're
okay. We're
good. We're out of time.
That's it.
Right? I just want you all to know I still have so many of her accomplishments yet to live, but I just want you to know that I know this woman and I love this woman and she is fabulous at what she does. So welcome, Randy. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Vicki. Hi, Paulette. So great to be here.
So nice to have you. Yeah, Paulette, I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, we've got to jump right in. So thank you so much for sharing all your expertise. With May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we know that this is an important topic on a lot of people's minds. And when you talk about divorce, particularly in the workplace, it's one of those things that people don't typically, talk around the water cooler, but that's one of the things we're changing. So with your expertise, can you explain for everybody how you can connect, or how is grief and divorce connected?
Sure. So, we often think about grief when we think about a death, we experience a death. And it would make sense if you explored on a deeper level that divorce is the death of a dream, the death of a relationship, the death of the hopes that we had when we stood in front of all of our friends and loved ones and, family members, and we vowed to be together forever. At that point, I don't know about you, but I don't know many people who get up there and say, well, for as long as this lasts, right? We say for as long as we both shall live, or right. Now I think we're moving more to for as long as we both shall love. However, whenever there's an ending and that finality, there's grief, because it's not something that we planned. It's not something that we necessarily prepared for. And it's something that we're going to grapple with and try to understand and try to make sense of, much like we do the death of a loved one. So I think if we can look at it that way, then we can have compassion, we can have empathy, we can have sensitivity, we can have the ability to provide support, much like we would if somebody experienced an actual death. And sometimes people going through divorce feel like nobody gets it. Nobody gets the pain, and nobody gets the struggles that we go through and the questioning that we go through. And I think it's kind of like a given when someone dies, but it's not a given when we get divorced.
So what I hear is that the empathy might be a little different, or the expectations may be a little different. And of course, everybody manages it differently. But with the death situation, I'm sure there must be some sort of time frame, or normal, I hate to use the word normal, but usual time frame before people start to heal. And there's probably a similar one with divorce. Is there a correlation, or is it totally different?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Paulette. So when you say a similar time frame, I would have to say the only similarity is that it depends, right? So the time frame depends on the person, and the time frame depends on their circumstances surrounding their divorce as well. So that's a really, really important aspect. And when you think about it from an HR perspective, you may not even be getting into those details with an employee at the onset. However, I think it's really important to recognize that even in the grief process where someone has died, different people go through it different ways. I always say, we're coming off the pandemic, or we're moving to a different phase of the pandemic, I like to say. And so different people went through the pandemic in different ways. If a person was grounded and confident and strong and maybe resourceful and resilient, they went through that pandemic differently, reinventing themselves, finding ways to cope, finding ways to get groceries, finding ways to manage, finding ways to socialize, finding ways to connect. They went through it differently than someone who started off depressed, anxious, insecure, uncomfortable. And so what I say is that any traumatic event is going to be experienced by an individual differently, dependent on their personality characteristics, their support system, their level of education, their level of, I would say, economic resilience. All of that plays into how does somebody move through any kind of a challenging situation, and particularly grief. We know from the research and all the literature that there are stages of grief that have been identified by a woman a long time ago named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And those stages include, and are not limited to, denial, where you're kind of shocked and in fear and confused and not believing this is really happening, to feelings of isolation and I'm alone and nobody understands me and nobody gets it, to anger. How could somebody do this to me, and how could this happen, and I didn't deserve this, and this isn't okay, and this isn't right, and to bargaining. If only I did this, or if only I did that, maybe this wouldn't be happening. Or depression. I'm feeling so sad. I'm feeling so lonely. I'm feeling so isolated. I just can't move, to a level of acceptance about, okay, this is my life now, and what do I do to move forward? However, what's really key and really important to recognize is these things don't happen in an orderly fashion.
Mhm.
These things don't happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once you're through with one, you get to the next. I just want to tell a brief anecdote about my own divorce. I had been divorced over 10 years. I had remarried. I was happily remarried. I was moving through my life. I had a beautiful 10-year-old daughter, almost 11-year-old daughter, who I was dressing up to go to her father, my ex-husband's wedding. I was pretty sure I was so through the grieving process that I dressed her up, bought her a pretty dress, dressed her up, got her all ready, got her all psyched to be the maid of honor at her father's wedding. And then when I went to walk her out to his car, this fit of rage just came over me because he left me and now he's marrying someone else. And it was 10 years later. And I'm thinking, I'm at acceptance. Wait a minute. I'm at acceptance. Where's this rage coming from? I'm done. No more denial, no more fear. I'm at acceptance. And all of a sudden I was at anger like I had experienced 10 years prior. And so different things are going to set off one of those stages. And as HR people, I think it's really key that you maintain a degree of curiosity and help someone to understand that you're okay with the fact that they may not be okay and they may not even know why. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And, it's one of the things that I've always said, Randy, about the difference between a death, the grieving of a death. And this is going to sound, I think, I wish I knew how to say this in a kinder, gentler way, but with the death of a spouse or a loved one, there's closure. Even though I'm still grieving, as you and I have discussed many times, the death of my own mother, that's 18 months ago, it's that I can accept that she's gone.
Right.
With a divorce, it just continues, particularly when there's still matters that are pending, particularly around child custody, financial arrangements, and all of that stuff comes into play. And is that trigger?
Yeah,
right.
For sure, Vicki. That's a great point because that person's still out there, right?
Yes.
So that person's still out there. And as you say, and it's a great point, you haven't gotten that closure. And I remember meeting my ex-husband in the parking lot and handing my daughter over. And he said, what's going on? I guess he sent something in me because he knows me well. And I said, I am so mad at you. I am just so mad at you. Like, why is this happening? Why did you do this? And again, I shocked my own self because I thought I was done. I thought I didn't care. I thought I was indifferent. And all of a sudden, that person is still out there. And so, yes, it's a different level of emotion. And I think you're right. It's all around closure. That day in the parking lot, I got my closure.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the stages of grief not being linear, that they can be a little bit of a mishmash because people will read the stages of grief and go, oh, which one am I on? I want to get to the next one. Let's hurry it up. I want to get to the next one. And there's also that 6th stage of grief, which is another book. I forget the author's name, but it's what is the lesson so that we don't keep living in the story, right? And an anecdote of the pandemic, I found that the extroverts were more miserable than the introverts. I knew people that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't have to see people. I don't have to wear clothes. Bring this on, baby. And others were like, and you're so
right. And when we talk about, I mentioned resilience. So someone who is resilient learns how to redirect their focus and move forward. And they tap into whatever resources they have to do that. What it's important for you to know at Divorce Right is many people don't have let me change that. Many people don't have the awareness of those inner resources that they have. And so people like you, Paulette, people like myself, other divorce coaches out there, and now I hope all the people who are listening here today have an opportunity to help people to tap into their resources, to figure out, okay, instead of, oh my God, what am I going to do now? There's an emphasis of, wow, what can I do now?
Yeah, they see it as a new opportunity, a new
That's
chapter.
right. It's a different way of looking at a problem, right? And so what I say as a therapist is, that is my job. If someone leaves my session with a, wow, how can I look at this problem a different way? Then I've accomplished something. I may not be able to help them to solve it, but I can help them to view it in a different way. And then they're going to be able to tap into their resources and find a way. So for me in the pandemic, I was stuck in a, little kitchen in my apartment doing my remote sessions during the pandemic. And I said, okay, how else can I do this? And tapped into my resources and figured out a way to take my remote practice to different states and be able to practice in different states. So that became my project during the pandemic, getting licensed in different states. So when you have a dilemma, if you can look at it a different way, if you can say, okay, yes, I'm grieving. And what did I do in another situation when I was grieving? How did I gather the strength that I needed to move forward, right? So getting support from other people, learning everything I needed to learn, getting in touch with a coach if I need to provide me, like we do at the gym or we do in business, we get coaches to help us to figure out how to do something better and different. So accessing whatever resources we need to get the support that we need to be able to move forward. But I think the very first thing that I want to impart to your audience today, Vicki, is we have to let people know that whatever they're experiencing is okay. And we have to do what we call normalizing it. Yes, this makes sense. It makes sense that you're struggling. It makes sense that you're sad. It makes sense that you're frozen and paralyzed and don't know what you're going to do next. And so let us help you. Let us find a way to help you to get out of this stuckness, as I say, that you're in, and find a way to say, okay, what can I do now? Right. Which seems beyond the realm of possibility when you're in a traumatic situation.
And to Vicki's point, she knows she's not going to run into her mother at the grocery store. Oh. But there's, that would be an interesting event. But now she probably won't likely run into her ex at the grocery store either. But if you're that type of person that wanted the divorce and you wanted to ask for it, you may have very different reactions and emotions and a process that you're going through versus you're the person that was blindsided, didn't want it, didn't see it coming. So that's where I find that therapy is particularly helpful if they're dealing with a different set of emotions and people don't really understand that.
Right. And I would say this. So I would say whether you're the leaver or the leavee, you are experiencing a lot of emotional reactivity. And I think that's a great point you make, Paulette, because I think people look at the person who wanted the divorce as someone who needs less care. Mm-hmm. However, let's think about that person. That person is shunned in their family. They're shunned in their community. People are wondering, what do you mean you wanted a divorce? You had what looked like a perfect life. Like, what's wrong with you? Or how could you do that to your spouse and your children? So there's a lot of shame and guilt and self-doubt associated even with the person who left. And I think that person gets a whole lot less compassion and empathy than the person who was openly betrayed, left, hurt. But what I always say is we come in the middle of their movie. So we have to realize, do you ever walk into a movie theater and you're in the middle of the movie and it's kind of like you're making up your own assumptions about who's the villain.
You're like, what happened? What's going on?
Yeah.
What happened? How did it happen? And how it's going to end, right? So I think we have to recognize when we are approaching anyone who's experiencing this kind of circumstance that we don't really know what their experience is. So again, I go back to my word curiosity. I think if we approach anyone with curiosity and compassion, we're going to understand much more about what they need, what their experience is, and how we can help them. Because again, going back to the notion of everybody is different, we have to recognize that what you may need, Paulette, is going to be very different than what you may need, Vicki, and what I may need. And so helping someone, and they may not even know what they need, right? So helping someone, one, to know it's okay to need help and know it's okay to accept help. And oftentimes when I name it, when I say, sounds like you're grieving, they're like, yeah, I think I am. I think this is worse than how I felt when my parent died. I think this is worse than how I felt because then I was maybe expecting it, or then I maybe knew what to do with it. This, I don't know what to do with. And I
And
think
it isn't just the emotional, they don't know what to think or feel. It's the whole process. They don't know what. So when you say, I don't know, am I? I had a call yesterday and the financial advisor asked my client, what is it you want? And there was at least 30 seconds of silence. And he said, are you there? I was on the call and being quiet and being curious. But she finally said, I don't know.
right.
She didn't know how to felt mentally. She was just totally vanilla, blank.
So, it's so right. And even as we talked about earlier, the processes, people don't even know. So here's what happens. I'm going to back up for a minute. I think when this event occurs and someone either receives divorce papers or there's a decision in a couple to divorce, I think there's kind of a paralysis that occurs.
Yes.
People become frozen in time and they don't know, okay, what do I do first? Do I go out to a lawyer? Do I go to a financial professional? Do I go to a therapist? What do I do? What kind of lawyer do I get? What do I need? So everything that you're saying is so true. And they don't even know that there are different options for how they go through divorce.
Right.
And so we have to help them with that to begin with. And the resources that are available to them. And more, we're seeing there's so many resources out there available to people. And, to help them with that and to help them to just accept the pain. So even in the grieving process, people are from a death, people are afraid to stop. What I recognize is somebody dies and everybody's really busy. I got to go to the funeral home. I got to buy the coffin. I got to plan this ceremony. I got to plan this. And there's a lot of people rallying around them to help them to do that, right? But in divorce, we lose a lot of our support system. People don't know, who do we support, right? Do we support, the husband, the wife, the wife, the wife, the husband, the husband? Who do we support? Who's our friend? Who's our family? No, you're my daughter-in-law. You're not my daughter. So I have to take care of my son or my daughter. So we lose a lot of that support that people get very generously when there's a death. And that's a significant difference between the grieving we do when there's a death and the grieving we experience when there's a divorce, because the support people, they don't know whose side to be on. They don't know how to rally. They don't know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, which is very different when people all come together when there's a death. It's very different.
It is. It's true. Shiva, think about that. People,
Correct.
right. Yeah. People show up and support. So what would some of the signs and symptoms of grief look like in a workplace environment?
Yeah. So I think, you might see people, let's talk about the paralysis stage, just being kind of in a cloud, not being as productive as you might have known them to be, not being as efficient or effective as they've been, because they're kind of like, I say they're kind of like going through a time warp and a tunnel. And, things are going on around them, but they're really not present for anything. So I think we may see people who are, very emotional and sensitive. Like you might say to them, you know, that document you sent, I would have really liked you to do X, Y, and Z with it. And all of a sudden they're crying and you're thinking, what did I say? What did I do? Why are they reacting that way? I didn't mean to upset them. And they're just sobbing. So maybe you're the trigger for what's wrong with you. You're not good enough. And that's what they're experiencing from a divorce, right? So they might be oversensitive. They might be late a lot. They might be tired a lot. They might be not sleeping well at night. They might be not eating well. So there's, a lot that we might see and we might chalk up to just inefficiency. And we need to really recognize that there's something deeper going on.
Yeah.
And so again, curious, ask. I notice that you seem different than you usually are. I notice that you're not getting your work in on time. I notice that you might be doing X, Y, and Z. How can I help? What do you need? What kind of support? And boy, does that go a long way.
Oh gosh, it absolutely does. So as we start to wrap up and we can start to see that, grieving is definitely a part of divorce because it is the death. So a question I know you get a million times, and because I know I get it too, but it's like, how much time does somebody need to go through the grieving process?
Yeah. So I think, the more you push, the more resistance you're going to get. So I think with anything, it's kind of like pushing a beach ball under the water. It keeps popping back up. So if you tell somebody, just stop it, just get over it. Come on. He wasn't good for you. She wasn't good for you. The mind has to prove you wrong. The mind has to say, oh no, you don't get it. You don't know how hard it is. You don't know how sad I am. You don't know how bad I feel. However, if you can join with someone around their pain, it's going to dissipate a whole lot faster. So the short answer, Vicki, is it depends, as I said, on the person and their level of resilience and their level of resourcefulness and their level of inner strength and confidence. And I'm not suggesting that someone who doesn't have that or someone who has less of that than the next person is less okay. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there are certain people who are more resilient than others and more resourceful, and they just look at it as a challenge and they move forward. They're going to take less time. It depends. But what I do know is that the more that you force them to get better, the longer it's going to take.
Isn't that the truth? So they're going through the grieving process. Randy, how do HR people, we as coaches, how do we encourage people to talk to people like you?
Yeah, so I think we have to help people to, as I said before, normalize the experience of pain that they're going through. And I think once we do that, there's less, I won't say no, but there's less shame and less guilt about feeling those feelings. And so if we say to them, listen, this is really hard. This is like a death. And I can only imagine what you're going through. That's going to soften them and allow them to be more open to the idea of getting help. And so providing them with people who are well-trained, and I say well-trained because there's a lot of people out there who think they've gone through a bad divorce and so they're able to help someone else. Well, maybe you're able to be a support system, but I think we need to look at trained and educated professionals. And there are many, many, many in the world today who are trained and educated to help people to get the support they need to move through this process in the best way possible. And to know that there's not a stigma. There's a stigma about not getting help and not being efficient and not being effective in your world. There's not a stigma about getting the help you need to become more efficient and more successful and more adept at life. My belief is this: if you're going to have a full life, you're going to have a life full of stuff. And it's just about how do we manage this stuff, right? And so getting the help you need to manage this stuff is the answer.
Just what I've always said to everybody, nobody comes through this life for free.
No.
We've all got our battle scars. We've all got them. It's how we manage that. Randy, this was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with us. It was so great to have you. And I just want to let everybody know this is Randy's website right here. or I'm sorry, her email address, and you can find her. You can email her, get in touch with her. Here is her website for those that need it. And I encourage you, love this woman from the bottom of my heart, and just think that she is a gift to anybody that's going through the divorce process. And lastly, what I want to do is, for those that are SHRM members, I want to share with you that we do have SHRM credits for today's broadcast. And you can click on that link right there and get yours for your SHRM credits. And we do this every Thursday from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And this month, we're going to be talking about things around mental health and awareness, because divorce definitely is a part of that. Mm-hmm. And so we look forward to seeing you next week. And Randy, again, thank you so much. You're so awesome.
Thanks for having me. You're both doing such great work. It's so important. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.